Can you briefly tell about how to retry the failed cases in automation process?
Yes, one of the common challenges when automating a process is to handle the bot such that it runs even in case of errors. So this is kind of error handling mechanism which is in place for Automation Anywhere. So we have a command called error handling command in Automation Anywhere, so which can handle any kind of unhandled errors as well as it can handle errors handled errors also it can handle. So in the if we in the error handling command we have this variable operation or which can hold whichever error happens for that particular line of code. So suppose if we are doing an object cloning for a particular text box where we want to set some value to the text box, and say in case that particular domax path the application IDs has changed, that particular line of code will result in an error because the path has changed. So in that case, so if we know that that path is going to be dynamically changed, so we can handle that by so that is a scenario which is known to us. We know that it can change at any point of time. So we can put an error handling command for that particular line of code, and if that error happens at that place, so we can retry the same step again. So suppose if error happens at that particular step, the first instance, and you know that that error can happen at any time, so you can have that particular domax path in some text file or some config file. So and you can read value from that configuration file and redo the same action. This is a scenario which is handled. Say suppose if there is some unhandled exception which happens in the code, which is not handled or which is not known, which is not a business scenario. So in that case, what we can do is we can mark that particular transaction as exception. We can mark that status as exception, and we have to configure the bot such that if any unhandled error happens, you have to mark it as exception and start the same transaction again. So this can be done using a DB or an Excel, where you can track the status of the particular transaction. Say suppose if you are if you are doing a particular transaction, taking data from an Excel, and if you are uploading it to a web page, and while doing so it results in an unhandled error, you can mark that particular transaction as exception using a database or an Excel. Can you use either, and you can query the transaction status, whether it is completed or it hasn't encountered an exception. So if you know that the particular transaction has encountered an exception, you can retry. This is about error handling.
Okay, that's good. Do you have any scripting experience, and where did you use that experience in your project?
Yes, scripting. I have used scripting in my previous experience of automating process. Say suppose we are using an application where the text box is not going to be initialized in the cursor will not be available in the text box due to some reason. Even if you are doing an object cloning to that particular text box, there are chances or there are possibilities in the backend where it is written such that the cursor should not be available to the text box. So in that case, what we can do is we can go to the help of a JavaScript or VB script to set focus to that particular text box, so that we can do a keystroke or do a set text command, things like that we can do with the help of scripts. So you can also do something like even if you can use VB scripts to say suppose we want to find the last modified date, or we want to do some get some values from particular folder like file names or date and time calculation, we can still go and use this VB script. We can also use this SQL queries and all if you have access to the database, if that is permissible to that project. So we can use database as well, that their SQL queries also would be handy.
Okay, that's good. How Macros will help us to automate the process? It is any possibilities we can use macros, and where we can use macros for any of the automations?
Yes, the Automation Anywhere has this capability of using macros. So we cannot create macros in the AA, but we have to create our own macros, and we can call that macros in AA. There is a command for calling macros. So we can call that command, and we can call that macro, which will execute in the background. So we can also have the generic error handling in the macro, such that it handles automatically in the backend, and we can pass the parameters obtained from the macros, and we can use that value to integrate with A, and we can do appropriate action.
Okay, that's good.